This agreement opens important sectors of Australia's economy such as telecommunications, government procurement, express delivery, computers, tourism, energy, construction, financial services, and entertainment. And the agreement strengthens protections for intellectual property and promotes electronic commerce.
There is a long-term structural decline in free-to-air broadcasting all around the world.
In 2004, the Howard government agreed to trade away Australia's right to mandate minimum content levels on new media, effectively selling Australia's cultural soul. The Minister for Communications, Media and the Arts, Senator Helen Coonan, appears to have not been involved in this deal at all, and publicly said nothing about its impact on the Australian media industry. In 2006, the Howard government then revised media ownership laws in Australia. It meant that owners of TV, radio and print could now own greater cross-platform media. It also opened the doors for foreign ownership. Amalgamations and sell-offs occurred immediately.
I don't know really where Steve's been for the last 3 years. I mean, we've just been watching a merger, for instance, of Southern Cross, Macquarie and Fairfax, where there was significant divestment of certain properties that were part of the group and part of the merger.
The Howard government has been pushing for years to open up cross and foreign media ownership. This greater concentration in media meant two things. Media moguls could control greater chunks of the Australian discourse, and that political parties would have an easier time getting fewer players to provide them with favourable media coverage.
I might ask the Leader of the Opposition, did he have his children on board when he met Kerry Packer for lunch 2 Thursdays ago? In his Guess Who's Coming to Lunch? Eh? Or was it just you and Kerry? Was it a nice little meeting? Was it a nice little meeting? How did Kerry treat you? Well, I hope. You know, one Sydney boy to another. One Sydney boy to... Better he treats me, eh? Yeah? Yeah, good. Good on you, John.
Howard's matery with TV networks was nothing new. Regardless of political persuasion, both sides of politics have been subservient to the broadcast networks. In fact, Graham Richardson was nicknamed the Minister for Kerry Packer. The following is a tape of an off-air conversation between Richardson and Laurie Oakes on Nine's Sunday program in 1989.
Well, you should have come over. The weather's great.
I wasn't allowed over there during the campaign. Didn't you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I was barred from Western Australia.
Yeah, because the Nationals are the greenies over here.
Well, certainly not the Labor government, that's for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't get down by the pool or on the beach because of my broken wrist, but everyone else has had a great time. Ramsey looks as though he's been on the Riviera. And the people from Nine didn't have much of a chance. I need a couple of days, but it's been nice.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, how'd you break your wrist? But don't tell me.
Mate, I was inspecting a national park. I thought I'd meet you there.
You sure you weren't doing the thing that we've accused you of doing too often for too long?
No, certainly not.
All right.
There's my left wrist, I told you.
So while current Minister for Broadband, Communications and the Digital Economy, Steven Conroy, claimed to come to the table with a fresh approach, he was clearly in a double talk about his relationship with commercial TV.
Whether or not we have a fourth free-to-air television. We don't want to see this sort of hoarding. We're very disappointed to see that the ABC aren't planning to show the World Netball Final. This is a premier sporting event. The matches, and if it goes to form, it should be Australia-New Zealand. These are fantastic athletic contests. So the ABC should be making sure that the final of the netball is shown live, because that is an abuse of its position if it's not showing such a sport that is so supported in Australia. But in terms of the tennis, Channel 7 actually show tennis from 10 o'clock in the morning with a few newses along the way, almost 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night. There's only so many games it can actually show.
Although this interview was shot in 2007, Conroy had no criticism of Channel 7 during the 2010 Australian Open, when it came under controversy more than once.
It's about money, 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 money. And you only have to look at the TV rights with Channel 7. The coverage was pathetic for the average punter.
It was scheduled third in the day.
To the program commitments, Victorian and New South Wales viewers are now leaving us.
About 9 minutes after the match began, Channel 7 left it in Sydney and Melbourne for the 6 p.m. news. Then there was this program on Today Tonight.
But other top-ranking females are making headlines out of their bottom lines.
The big talking point during the week has been whether she's wearing any underwear, and of course she is.
By the time Seven returned to the tennis, Stosur had lost in straight sets.
It's a little cynical, some of the approaches being taken, but that's my job. I've got to deal with some of the biggest, toughest people in the country, and my job is to try and get a package that's fair and balanced. And what we're seeing is a focus at the moment about one part of the package and ignoring the significant changes that we've had, which we've already announced.
A gift of $250 million, or $87 million each, was given to the commercial TV networks. Although it was entitled Government to Protect Australian Content on Commercial Television, there was no mandate for the money to be used on Australian content, and the minimum content requirements of 55% were unchanged, claiming any extra or specific funding for Australian content would violate the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement. The Rudd government have made no statements regarding the fairness of the US-Australian Free Trade Agreement, nor any plans to help the local media industry. Conroy appears to concede that the new platforms will be lacking in Australian representation.
So there's an enormous convergence. And what this decision was recognition as part of a package. And some of that's been lost, unfortunately. The announcements we made in January about freeing up spectrum and taking spectrum off the free-to-air networks. That's been lost in this debate.
It was then revealed that Conroy had met with chairman and majority owner of Seven Network, Kerry Stokes, on a skiing trip in an exclusive resort in Canada just before the so-called support was announced.
I don't expect any minister in the previous government or this government, or Tony Abbott, who met on the weekend with Rupert Murdoch, to reveal what policy issues that they canvassed or discussed.
It seems to me most people who are writing the issue haven't skied before. It's really difficult to have in-depth conversations while you're skiing.
Stokes appeared quite comfortable in admitting Seven were seeking new profit opportunities at the Seven AGM.
We haven't been happy with the discount that Seven has traded at for some time now.
As both sides lack a shred of integrity on media issues, Australians are still stuck with a system of TV and media that doesn't work, and it gets more pathetic. While there has been little visible criticism coming from the opposition's current broadband and communications spokesperson, Tony Smith, it could be because he can't even keep his website online. On 12 February 2010, it became clear that the domain name hadn't been renewed. There is, of course, a way to mandate that the $250 million is used on Australian content, by supplying it through a grant scheme where networks would submit proposals and then have them agreed upon by the government. It would ensure taxpayer dollars were being used to fund Australian jobs.
What mistakes have you made that have contributed to that? I mean, does it come down to individual?
But the money was never intended to fund Australian content. Write to Conroy and his puppet master Rudd. Tell them that enough is enough. Tell Tony Abbott that you won't let him do a John Howard on your local media industry.